something like that.
I do know you very well, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got worried there when you said very well.
No, I do know you very well, but let's leave that conversation for another time.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm happy to, crack on today for as long as you need me for. I have some slides prepared.
I thought it was just 1 hour, but now that we know we have you, and that's why I was trying to rush up all of the introductions. But now that I know we have you for as long as, okay, I can count down now and let you.
Yeah, you have me for as long as you need me. I've got some slides prepared, which I wanted to run through just based on some of the things we discussed. And thanks, Busola, for making this happen and setting up the meeting. And good to meet everyone. I can see one other person who has their camera turned on, apart from Busola. No pressure on anyone to turn on your cameras, but it's always good to see faces. That's one of the things I learned during the pandemic. I got to confirm when we started to see people in person. So it's good to meet everyone. Good to meet you all. Okay, just a quick question from me is, maybe Busola will answer for on behalf of everyone. Everyone on this group is based here in the UK, is that right?
No, so we have the UK and the EU. We have our friends from the EU, Netherlands, and so Germany and some other countries here too. So.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. I've prepared what I've prepared from a UK perspective, but hopefully people who are based elsewhere abroad as well will benefit from it. So I'll share my screen in just a minute. Just let me know when you see my screen. I can see my own screen now, but not sure if everyone sees that.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Good. So again, thanks for having me. I want this session to be as interactive as it can be. So if you guys have any questions, if you want to stop me in the middle of the way, just feel free. Otherwise, I'm happy to pick up questions at the end when we get there. So again, this is about career success in the UK. Obviously, like Busola said, I've just got promoted to senior manager, but obviously it's not a journey that started, the day I was promoted. It was a journey that started months and years before. And I want us to, just, if I can ask everyone, just craving your indulgence to, let's look away from the promotion and just focus on ourselves and how we can really make that impact in the workplace. Because the promotion is just a reward. It's just an outcome of years and months of something that you've done consistently well. And people in leadership look at you and say, hey, this person deserves to move on to the next level. So when you look at it, it's them making a decision, but it's also them making a decision on who you are or who you've been over the last months or years. Sorry, was somebody saying something? If I had, okay. So I could go on and on about these tips. So I've just summarized them to 9, which I think are the most useful from my own experience. And obviously there are many ways of doing many things. So if I say 9 tips, it doesn't mean that these are the only tips that you need. It's just based on the context of people in the UK, the fact that I'm speaking to managers and aspiring managers. I've tried to, just focus on the most important things from my perspective. And I'm hoping that we, again, make this session as interactive as possible. And I'm happy to, again, stay back if you have any questions I need to answer. Okay, if we move on now to just a little bit about me. I think Busola did justice to that, but just for context again, what I do really is technology risk consulting, and I've been doing that for 10 plus years now. Started with KPMG Nigeria in 2012, relocated to the UK in 2018. So I've been here for 4 years plus now. And in the space of that time, I've been promoted twice. First in 2020 and then recently in September. So that's about me in summary from a professional perspective. Trust me, there's a lot more. But yeah, just summarize it. So this slide is about 2 questions that I have for you and everyone on this call listening. I think we have 18 of you. The first question is, what is the single biggest challenge that you see Africans or Black people facing in the British workplace? I mean, if you can you can unmute if you want to answer, or you can drop in a chat. I will be looking at that shortly. I won't stay too long on this, so if you want to say something, please just come off mute and say it, or type it in chat. Okay, so that says bias. There's no right or wrong answer, so just say what comes to mind, please. Work ethics, interesting. Deji, navigating the terrain.
Do you
Yes.
realize that was actually wrote on it? Do you realize
Okay. I'm assuming that's not a question, or that's not an answer to the question. Okay, work ethics, navigating the terrain, bias. I'll just take one more. Okay, not sure how I went on mute, but that's fine. Okay, so yeah, all of those points really make sense, and like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. From a perspective, and just looking at what some of my colleagues have said, when I've talked to them in the past, one of the biggest challenges that we face is access to opportunities. So we're working with colleagues, we're working with everyone, but some people move on, they move up, they get promoted, and Black people, Africans just get passed up on opportunities. And it's something that we look at and we're asking ourselves, why is this happening? But it tends to, when conversations about those things happen, some of the things we hear is, it's based on merit. It's based on, that thing you thought you deserved that you didn't get. You only didn't get it because you didn't work hard enough, or you didn't deserve it. But we know, deep down that sometimes that's not really true. I'll move on to the next question, which is, what kind of person would you retain in your team and promote if you were the one making the decision? So put yourself in a position of somebody making a promotion decision, or trying to recommend somebody for an opportunity. What kind of person would you promote? Again, no right or wrong answer. Result-oriented staff, yes, absolutely agree with that. Someone who adds value, Kayode. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'll take one more. Guys, give it to me. I know you have it. Team player, yeah. Fidelia. Okay, I feel like I know that person. Anyway, yeah, somebody who's proactive, smart, hardworking, collaborative. Okay, good. All this make a lot of sense. And if I were to summarize all of that, I think from a perspective and being here in the UK, just focusing on the UK, and it's the same elsewhere, to be honest. I think the kind of person you'll promote or retain in your team is somebody you trust. So if we're going to use like a single word to summarize that, that would be trust. And then we'll explore that a bit more, because those 9 tips I mentioned, 8 of them are about, trust, in and out of trust. And the 9th is just something summarizing it all. We'll come back to this if we need to, but I'll just move on. So I got some questions ahead of the session, which Busola has kindly shared with me, which I went through. Tried not to go through them while I was preparing for the slides. So I don't prepare the slides based on this. I prepare it based on what I wanted to share. So it was afterwards I came back to look at the question and said, which of those questions will be answered directly by this presentation? And I think 5 of them, the ones in green, will likely be answered. I won't go through all of them now, but we can come back to them later if there's anything we need to still talk about. Okay, what are your expectations today? I'll talk about, just getting ahead in the UK. What are your expectations? Well, in the UK and abroad. Now I know that we have other people here who are not based in the UK. Please just drop them in the chat. What are your expectations? So, I'd like to be a chairman too. I did, Okay. What are your expectations? I guess this is the part where I expect everyone will be typing something, because everyone came here with expectations. We have 23 people on the call now. Excel in my career with impact and influence. Okay. Career growth. I think one more and then we'll move on, just conscious about time now. Learn how to get ahead and be high flyer. Brilliant. Yeah, but I'm hoping that this session will at least answer some of those questions. And then we can obviously discuss and see how we can explore some other ones if any other one comes up. So before we crack on, before we go into all of the details that we need to talk about today, I just wanted to let you know that I made some assumptions coming into this session. And one of those assumptions we've talked about before, I made the assumption I was speaking to everyone on this call was in the UK. I should have asked Busola, but apparently it's not just the UK. So my context is a UK context, coupled with my professional experience from Nigeria. So everything brought together. I've also made some assumptions about you, that you believe in yourself. that you do your job and you do it well and you're excellent at it. That you manage a team and you're going to be managing one soon. You at least have an idea of some of the challenges that Black people, Africans face in the workplace. And so much more. So I've made loads of assumptions coming into this call. And those assumptions are things I don't think we'll need to be talking about, because you already have an idea, or it's something you're very familiar with. And again, if we crack on there and look at those 9 tips now, if you have any questions that you want to tackle like right away, I may not be seeing the chat, so FYI, I may not be looking at that once I go into this 9, start going into this rest of slides. But if there's anything that's urgent that you want me to address, just come off mute and, just ask. Okay, so the first one is about embracing the culture, right? I think that's something we have to acknowledge, and it's the fact that there's a cultural difference between us and a lot of people we work with in the workplace here in the UK or anywhere else abroad. Obviously, there are things that we share. We share ambition, desire to progress and succeed. But there are things that are culturally different, and it's like a gulf sometimes. And I feel that if we don't identify those cultural differences, they will continue to be a blocker. They will continue to be obstacles when they should actually be the reason that we're shining, we're outstanding at what we do. And just to bring this home and give it some context. One of the greatest culture shocks that I had when I started here in the UK, and again, this is specific to the work environment, was the fact that not everyone that I worked with had ambition to be promoted quickly. It was a culture shock because I thought everyone was at their job and wanting to progress to the next phase as quickly as possible. It was later I found out that some people actually, are on the job and they don't want to be promoted for another 3 to 5 years for a variety of reasons. Some people feel like the next level is too challenging and they just want to be where they are. Some people feel, they just had children, so they've gone on maternity leave for 2 or 3 years in a row, and this is not the time to be taking on new challenges. So they just want to focus on what they have. It was a perspective that I didn't have from Nigeria, because I think in Nigeria, everyone I've worked with or interacted with had some ambitions somewhere at the back of their mind. It was almost as if everyone was working. Once you got promoted to this next level, you're already thinking about the next level. And as Nigerians, it was something that, I was very much used to. One of the other culture shocks that I had was that if you have a 30-minute meeting, and I know a lot of you people have experienced this as well, you spend sometimes up to 5 minutes just throwing banters and talking about things that are not relevant to the meeting. So I come into this meeting, I have 5 things I want to talk about. And as soon as I start the meeting, I'm like, thanks everyone for joining. The purpose of this call is XYZ. And everyone is just looking at me and I'm just wondering, what have I said? They go into the meeting, they crack on, yeah? But what I later realized, and I soon realized it, and it didn't take me too long, was that there was actually something missing. People expected me to ask about certain things, talk about the match that happened over the weekend, talk about, the weather, talk about, my trip on the train the Sunday before, talk about, maybe a little bit of politics or something that just happened, the prime minister resigning and somebody else replacing them. There were just things that I didn't quickly catch. But later, obviously, I got to know them and started to make adjustments. So how can we take advantage of this? So if you have a meeting, for instance, where you're expected to throw banters for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it means you can actually think about what you want to say first. But once you get into the meeting, ahead of the meeting, you can think about the people you want to meet in that meeting and think about their interests, the things they like, the things they want to talk about. Think about those things and then go into that meeting, asking about it. For instance, I have, if you guys use OneNote, on my OneNote, some of my colleagues, I have the names of their children in my OneNote. Because some of them, I can't remember the names easily. I just put the names of their children when they talk about it. So, yesterday I was doing nursery rounds and and I took Finn, I took Emilia. I'm like, okay, Emilia. And I type it out. So that when next week I want to call, I'm just saying, hey, how did it go with Emilia this morning? Did you take her to the nursery? Oh, say, oh yeah, thanks for asking. And what that does is really powerful, but we sometimes don't appreciate it because culturally it's not something we're used to. So that's an example of how to leverage it. Just finding out what their interests are and taking advantage of it. I can go on and on about this one because it's something I've seen like every time it happens. And I also see people from other cultures. I see other Nigerians in some of my meetings, and I see the way some of them, if they've just arrived, I can tell. They jump into some of the meetings and like, okay, chill, man, just chill. And I'm not saying this applies to every UK instance, but in the UK, it's quite common to throw banters. In fact, I'm not saying you have to do it, but you have to be conscious of your audience, such that when you're in such a place, you take advantage of what is different culturally and try to show interest, try to show that you care, try to show that you understand them. So that, for instance, if you're in the Netherlands, that may not be the case for you. Might be something else. Now, I'll be interested to hear that when the time comes, if you want to share. So I'll leave this for now. We can come back to you if there are other questions. So embracing the cultural difference and leveraging it, taking advantage of it. Don't fight it. Don't resist it. Just embrace it. Just treat it as if it's something new and you just want to experience it. Number 2 is know the expectations of your role. Don't make assumptions. And try to do the same for that next level you're aspiring to. You think this is really basic and this is something everyone does, right? We know our job description. We know what is expected, right? Yeah. To my surprise, that when I talk to friends and colleagues, I find that they actually do know. They know like the hard details of their roles, but sometimes they don't know the soft details of their role. And what I mean about that, for instance, is if you're a manager, what you're essentially doing is you're executing. And in your role executing, it's easy to just focus only on execution and ignore 100% the strategy. Okay, so when I say strategy, every organization has a strategy, right? But if I do a poll right now and ask everyone on this call, do you know the strategy of your organization? Maybe, I mean, maybe half of people, maybe, you know, don't want to make any assumptions, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people don't know. In fact, if you don't know, maybe you should just say you don't know in the chat. And it's easy to just focus on, oh, the task I'm given. Those fine details about what your organization is up to, what the ambitions are, linking that to the expectations of your role. So for instance, I'm a manager and I'm executing, I'm doing the doing on a day-to-day. Why am I bothering myself with strategies for the CEO and the COO and and the CFO and all those people? Strategy is not for me, but that's not true. Those fine details help you to sort of align. I don't want to expand this too much here, but knowing what your organization is up to helps you to contextualize what you're actually doing. It helps you to see a picture that is bigger than your own sort of micro focus, because you're zoomed in on what you're supposed to be doing and you're just focused on delivering, but you're not seeing those nuances, so to say, that surrounds your role. So one way to do this, and when I say the expectations of your role, I wanted to put those in inverted commas first, but I said, okay, no, I'll just talk about it on this call. I find that the expectations that you have written in your job description tend to differ from what your manager believes the expectations are. And when I talk to people, it's quite similar. And I hear it a lot. So it's not even in my role. It's not something I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know why he's asking me to do it. I don't know why my manager is asking me to do it. And you can see that there's an expectations gap. The manager expects X, Y, Z, but you believe your role requires A, B, C. It's going to be difficult to have any real career success or any real impact if you're so energetic about A, B, C, and X, Y, Z is what your manager is expecting. So maybe it's actually not that disparate. Maybe it's not that confusing. Maybe your manager actually expects A, B, and C, you just thought that that's what your manager expects. So one of the things I do, and I found it really useful, and it's something I've just picked up from others, is discussing and agreeing expectations. So I leave my assumptions behind about what I think my role is. And I ask my manager who is asking me to do stuff and say, what are your expectations? And then I go away, document those expectations and send it via email and say, actually, I think this is what you're expecting of me, right? Can you confirm? Is there anything else? Sometimes I haven't captured everything. Sometimes the manager has not even said everything. But because I've gone away to summarize all that he said or she has said, they go and add one or two things. Oh, actually, one more thing. And what that does is it helps the manager see you in a different light. They see you as somebody who really cares about what they expect of you. And you've not just gone away based on the assumption of you knowing your role, that, oh, as a manager, this is what I believe I should be doing. So that's one way. Another way is understanding and living the values. Living the values that your organizations say they want you to live. But I think that everyone on this call probably gets what I'm trying to say here. But I'll leave that and just move on to the next. Actually, before I move on, let me just work one more thing here. One of the ways to build on the expectations of your role is discussing with people who have done that role for a long time, or who have just left that role and moved on to another role. Because the benefit of hindsight is something I think I find really, really useful. And sometimes when I look back at my old roles and some of the things I know now, you know, I'm like, oh wow, I didn't think this was what it was supposed to be. And you know, an example would be a manager, you're supposed to deliver on a project, and from your perspective, the key things that are important on the project is scope, time, and budget. And you just feel that those three things are things that you should be responsible for. And if you ask your manager, you're probably right. But just maybe your manager also expects something more. As a manager, is thinking, in your role, I expect you to be managing customer relationships and building the relationship with the customer, ensuring that when we come back for more work, we can win more work. So if you're focused on, you know, budget, scope, and time, and you're like, okay, this is, you're not wrong. It's just that for your manager, customer relationship may actually be 50% of the expectation, and the rest of the 50%, in his or her view, is a given. It's like, yeah, that's like the basic. You have to be doing that. But customer relationship is what I really, really need you to be focusing on. I'm moving on this one. So this third tip is one of the biggest lessons I've learned since moving over to the UK. There are two big lessons, this third tip and one which we'll get to in a minute. I'm sure most people on this call would have had some feedback around communication, or have somebody who has had the feedback around communication. So communication, not that you're not speaking good English, not that you're not saying things, but one word that I think comes up a lot as feedback to, you know, Black and African professionals in the UK is the word impact. And there's a derogatory sense to it, because it almost feels like almost every African and Black person is like, oh, you're not making enough impact in your communication. And you're like, what does that really mean? I was speaking to someone recently and I was like, oh, were you there? That's exactly what they said to me. I was like, yeah. Don't worry, I've been there. I know what they're trying to say, but they try to summarize it as, you know, you're not communicating with impact. Culturally, as Nigerians, we're verbose. We use lots of words to actually say what we want to say, when we can actually get there in fewer words. You know, I don't need to give examples, and I would think most people can relate with that. In fact, if you can relate with that, just say yes in the chat. And one of the things I learned here is you can actually say what you want to say. You can keep it short and sweet. And somebody told me, keep it short and sweet and be gone. Meaning, say what you want to say and just leave the rest. Don't feel like you need to fill any blank space. As someone being in a situation where you're talking to someone, maybe in a meeting, and then all of a sudden you felt like they're not listening. And because of that, you want to keep saying more. You're like, okay, so what I'm trying to say is, actually the context is, and from the perspective, they're like, Yeah, I get it, but the more you say, like, the more you're confusing me. I've been in meetings where somebody has said to me, sorry, I don't understand. And I just felt embarrassed, like, yeah, I mean, I don't understand, but I'm trying to explain. In fact, the more I was explaining, the more I was digging my, it's like, yeah, I don't understand what you're saying. And what I have to say here is, two things. Number one is, because we're culturally, we're verbose, we use lots of words, we tend to sometimes say what we don't want to say. And number two, we tend to over-explain, even when someone is not asking. So what I've said here is, please don't bluff. I know as Nigerians, and I'm not saying anyone on this call is bluffing or is bluffed, or but it's just something to be conscious of. People, when we're speaking with people, they sort of lose trust in us when they get a sense that, one, we don't know what we're saying, or two, we're just bluffing. Please explain this last line about over-explaining and bluffing. Yes. So I think one of my observations is that people feel that if you're explaining and over-explaining or adding some more information is because you don't really know what you're trying to say. It's like you're trying to beat about the bush and figure it out while you're talking. And if you're honest, you've probably done it before. I've done it before. Like I'm talking, I don't really know the point I want to fully make, but I just trust myself that as I'm explaining it, I'll be figuring it out. And people just, they tend to get pissed off and get annoyed. If you've worked a lot with, especially British folks, it's easy to offend them, and they don't act like they're offended. Exactly, I don't know the bush, so I just beat everything. Yeah, so just communicating with impact requires you to. So, for instance, I want to say, when I started this meeting, I said there were 9 tips I wanted to talk about. Sometimes we can go into a meeting and start talking about first tip, second tip, top tip, and nobody knows that you're actually going to 9 tips. So in their mind, they don't even know where you're going to. But if you said it at the beginning, or you want to talk about 9 tips, everyone knows that they're expecting, okay, this is tip 3, there's 6 more to go. And it's just something I wanted to emphasize. It is really important as you progress and you become responsible for more people. People want clarity, and they want to see that in you. And then when you're meeting, like my role requires me to be client facing, so I meet like almost every strange person I've not met before every week or every other week. And I have to communicate, I have to say stuff to them. And they have to leave with an impression that they just spoke with somebody who knows what he's saying. And I'm sure we have all been in that situation where we've spoken to somebody and we felt, I don't think that person knew what he was saying. Sometimes that's not actually true. The person knows what they're saying. They've just not been able to deliver it. Yeah, that's right, Chin. So, they call it signposting. So what you're hearing is set a context before you start communicating, and numbering and labeling. Yes, signposting, just making it clear, both in written and in verbal communication. One big point around communicating I want to just mention, I think is probably the biggest, is we tend to feel that people care about our accent, but they don't really care about our accents. They don't care if you're sounding very Yoruba-ish, very Igbo-ish, very Hausa-ish. They are used to working with people that have loads of accents. Indians, Filipinos, they work with everyone. And some of them are even their bosses, so they understand them. So it's not really about the accent. Sometimes we feel it's the accent, but it's not really the accent. Because no matter, with all due respect, we understand President Buhari when he talks. Well, we tend to sometimes. But it has heavy accent, doesn't it? And, you know, it's just something that we tend to think, but the other person doesn't really think. And I've had discussions with people before, like white managers who are white. I mean, my managers who are white, and we've talked about some things like that. Sometimes they say, "Oh, sorry, it's me who has the accent. It's not you." And I'm like, "Okay, are you trying to make me feel good or what?" I have an accent, yes. We all have an accent, and let's not focus on the accent. Nobody really cares. They just care about what we want to say. Okay, thanks, Coyote. The last point on, oops, I've just scrolled across my slides. That's good. The last point on this slide that I wanted to just make quickly is knowing your audience and tailoring your communication to them. There's some audiences, all they want is highlights of the news. There are some audiences, they want the highlights of the news and they want all the details and the references. So knowing the kind of audience you're talking to, the guys who want the highlights of the news, they don't, most times they're like the really senior people, but they want you to have all those details ready when they ask. But they say they don't want you to give it to them right away. They don't want you to say, okay, I have 9 tips to talk about today. And then once you say 9 tips, you just summarize all those 9 tips. Tip 1, X, tip 2, Y, tip 3, Z. And then once you're done, you just stop and you leave it with them. If they want to dig deeper, they say, oh yeah, on tip 3, what was it you wanted to say there? And that's one audience. Another audience are interested in all of the details with the references of where you got the information from and all of that. Just moving on. I think we're not doing really well with time, but I'll rush through those rest now. Just spent a bit of time on that one, on those ones. So tip 4, this is something we don't do really well. Like just speaking with other Africans in the UK, we don't blow up trumpet loud and long enough because we just expect that people will see that we're doing great work. But if you look at our colleagues on the other side, who are not exactly our color, they do that quite well. If you're honest and you see them in your team, they do that really, really well. In fact, little things they do, they blow it and talk about it. And, you know, they're there, they're talking, and you're like, oh my God, this guy, I do like 10 times more than he does. I've written here that there's no humility in winking in the dark. So when you're winking in the dark, no one really sees you. As a manager, you can't only do, you know, the things that you do, and your output is only via email and you send it. It has to be that you find the opportunity, proactively look for the opportunity to share, and, you know, even possibly engage more senior members of your team or your leadership. So for instance, because I'm an IT auditor, we tend to work in teams a lot. And sometimes in those teams, a senior colleague, like a partner, will just show up and say, hi guys, how are you guys doing? What's going on? And then I just see the way like this most junior member of the team just jumps on things and say, oh yeah. And they just start talking about all the things they've been doing. And I'm like, culturally, I'm like, can you just chill? Am I not supposed to be the one? I'm the manager here. I'm not supposed to be the one summarizing to this partner to let him know all the things we've been up to. But culturally for them, you know, I've done the work. Why can't I just talk about it? Why do you have to speak for me? You know? So they go and they just start talking about it. Obviously, there are instances where the manager needs to speak, but I'm just saying, you know, in a more relaxed atmosphere where you're just in a team and people are sitting down, you see them and they just engage. They just start speaking about the things you're doing. And if we don't do that all the time, we need to particularly make sure that when like the decision makers are there, we at least show what we're doing. We need to be proud of what we're doing. We need to, you know, say these things and say them confidently. For instance, if you're doing something, you're delivering a project, when you, depending on how senior the person is, if there's somebody who is crucial to your promotion, you're not just going to talk about delivering the project and doing good work alone. You're going to find a way to actually tie it back to your strategy. So for instance, if your strategy, one key pillar of your strategy is growth, a good way to talk about it would be to mention that you believe by delivering this work and doing good work, we're in a position to win more work from this client. And you talk about some of the discussions you've had with the clients. Like I've spoken to XYZ, and you know they seem really keen for us to be doing, you know, ABC for them in the future. When that partner thinks about something to talk about around the opportunity, guess who they're going to be looking for? You. They're not going to be looking for any other person. It's you who has had that discussion with them. In fact, if they're talking about it with someone else, they're going to be saying, "Oh, Mayowa said this," and I had a chat with him, and it sounded like, you know, it was on top of things. He might need some help though. Maybe we need to get Sola to help him, you know, and showing that you're really interested in what the success is, and you know, just engaging. And one bit about it is also be clear about your aspirations. Don't be in their faces. It's not every meeting you have with a partner you're talking about your aspiration. It almost sounds like somebody, every time you meet them, they're asking you for money. Are you going to be, you know, even if the person is your family member, at some point you're going to just be pissed off, like, you know. So we have to do it carefully and strategically, letting decision makers know. Tip 5 is, you know, volunteering and helping, offering help, and doing this thoughtfully and strategically. So you don't just raise your hand to help every single time they say, "Oh, is somebody available to do this?" You just raise up your hand. No. You have to proactively identify those things that move the needle, those things that make the difference, those things that give you the visibility that you need. Again, I'm talking from my own context, and I think it's really important for my context to be visible, to show that you're involved. But it's not just showing, it's being genuinely involved. So, for instance, if there's a gay pride march in your office, and they're saying, "Who is interested?" And you're not interested in that. You're not interested in doing anything about that. Nobody's going to come and say, "Why are you not interested?" I mean, if it happens, then you need to, you know, with wisdom, manage that conversation. But if there's a careers fair that's going on, and all the senior leaders in your company are going to be there, and you're inviting students from other universities come to your company to, you know, talk about what you guys do, and they're looking for somebody in your team to talk about your job. If your CEO is going to be there, please jump at the opportunity. Don't bother about how well you will do. Think more about the impact that will have, and plan. And most times when we plan to do some of these things, we do really well. So if you're at that careers fair, you're talking passionately about your work, and your CEO or somebody else is there listening, they're going to remember you. They're going to say, "Hey, Busola was the guy, was a lady talking about, you know, what we do, and you know, she sounded so passionate. I haven't met her before. I didn't even know she was in our team." You know, And then before you know it, you already have some visibility. You didn't know how much impact that had, but trust me, you left an impression. So do strategic stuff that are meaningful, that move the needle. Like you have a charity walk. If you have even if you don't like walking or hiking, and they said there's a charity walk, just talk to somebody, hey, I don't like walking. I probably won't walk the entire distance, but I'll walk for 5-10 minutes, and I need to be back home to take care of family or something. And then you're there. You take all the pictures, you make sure that people, they see you, you interact, you sort of gel, and then when it's time to leave, you can take your leave. We can come back to this one if anyone has a question. So when I was talking about things that were really important, I said there were two things. And the first one was the one on communication, and this one for me is the second most important, and it's seeking feedback. Seeking feedback, ensuring you understand the feedback. Because sometimes we can ask for feedback. Somebody has given us a good feedback. We think, oh yeah, that's fantastic feedback. But we don't really understand it. Like for instance, somebody said, try to be more impactful. Okay. You're like, what does that really mean? Try to be more impactful. Okay. Are you saying that I wasn't impactful in one of those meetings you were in with me? Or are you saying that as a person, I'm just not impactful? And then, just seeking to understand it, making an effort, devoting time to it, and, asking those people to please explain. No, you can ask via email, but you can also, I would prefer not to ask via email and just give the person a call and say, hey, well, you gave me this feedback and thanks so much for this feedback. And I think it's really useful. You said this, and I don't think I really understand the context. Are you able to provide some more information? I'm just keen to start addressing this feedback. And it's not every feedback that is constructive. There's great feedback, good feedback that people give us. When we request feedback, it gives us that confidence that we're doing the right thing. And request it frequently. Don't. So for instance, when somebody gave me a feedback about my communication years ago, they got tired of me because every time we're in a meeting together, at the end, I'm just going to drop them a chat and say, hey, how did that go? How was my presentation? What do you think? Did I do this? Did I do that? And they just give me the feedback. And ask formally, ask informally as well. If you're going to lunch with a colleague, you can ask, oh, we did X, Y, Y, we submitted this. What do you think? Was there anything we could have done better? And when I say downward as well, upward, people above you, and downward, people below you, and sideways, people were your colleagues on the same level as you. Just getting that feedback is important. When you feel you don't understand the feedback, don't make any assumptions, please. Just request for that person to clarify. And it's important to build this into our culture, make it a culture, make it something you do from time to time, not just something you do once in a while. As feedback is a crucial element to how we grow. And as you're probably aware, growth is iterative, something you do over and over and over. So if you're repeating something you've not done well, will become the culture. So like for a bad habit, it's like it didn't become a bad habit because you woke up one day and it was bad habit. It was because you were doing that thing over and over, either without realizing it or not. Hopefully I've not lost anyone. Trust me, we're almost there. It's 7 of 9. This one is about building your professional network, and I think that people overlook this one a lot. And when you talk about professional network, people just assume that you're talking about networking with other people from other organizations and knowing somebody in Barclays, knowing someone in NatWest, knowing somebody in Google, knowing somebody in Microsoft. Well, yeah, that's your professional network. But in the context of career success within your organization, some people only know the people in their unit. Trust me. And that can be for honest reasons, because you're working remotely and you only talk to only the people in your team. But trust me, again, it's also not an excuse. Some people, I think if we're intentional about this, we'll be surprised how much of our professional network we can expand within a year. If you take every meeting you attend as an opportunity to meet somebody new and network, you're going to build a strong network. And the network is really important. Let me give you an example. I was in a meeting sometime, and somebody was saying something I didn't know, but for my level, I was supposed to know that thing. It was like, okay, I felt like I was going to be stupid if I asked on that call. So I just let it go. But on the call, I saw that there was somebody I knew that we had met at a training before. After the call, I just reached out to the person privately and said, hey, this was said. I didn't quite get what was said. And I don't think I know what they were saying. I was like, oh yeah, actually it's this. So sometimes when we think about network, we think about it like it's such a big deal. Yes, there's a big deal to it, but there's also a small deal to it sometimes. Just going, if I didn't know that person, if I didn't have that relationship with that person, I probably won't be that confident to go there and ask the question. So, there are so many reasons why we should be doing this, and just be a bit more deliberate about it. And, there are two people you must identify when you're building this professional network. From my perspective, again, those people are, one, a mentor, and number two is a sponsor. A mentor is somebody you admire who can help you grow in certain area that you believe you need to grow in. And a sponsor is someone senior in your organization who can influence things on your behalf, who can be in meetings that you cannot be in, who can say things on your behalf that no other person can say. A mentor is easy to identify because you see them every day. You see them in your team. You're like, oh man, I like the way this guy does this. And it doesn't have to be a mentor over every aspect of your life. You may not even like them for certain things that they do. It might just be that they just know how to get the job done, and you admire that about them. And you can just get that mentor for that area of, and it doesn't have to be that you formally call them a mentor, like you guys agree that you be my mentor, be your mentee. No, not necessarily. But with the frequency with which you go to them for certain things, it will soon become clear to both parties that the relationship you have is a mentor-mentee relationship. And the difficult one is a sponsor. Identifying a sponsor is really difficult because what you're essentially doing, you're looking at somebody senior who can push your case. And that is difficult because, it's like asking somebody to write a reference for you. It's like, oh, write a reference. Why would they write a reference? It's because they know you, because they trust you, because they believe in you. So to get to that point is usually difficult, but it's a journey that I think if you start soon enough, you get there. And one of the ways I took advantage of some of the initiatives that we have in the organization is at KPMG, is when, for instance, when George Floyd died, we started this allyship program where, it was called Black Allyship. So they assigned like senior people in the firm to people, but it wasn't something they just assigned. They sent an email out and said, oh, if you're interested. And I was like, oh, this is a fantastic opportunity. And I just jumped in. And I got a director in my organization who I knew from afar, but, and it was assigned blindly. It wasn't like I had any influence on who was going to be assigned to me. But I knew I was going to either be a director or a partner who was going to be assigned. So I jumped at the opportunity. every opportunity I got to meet with this person, I went very prepared. I'll go with my list of questions. We spoke 30 minutes we took 30 minutes every 2 months. 30 minutes every 2 months. I would cram as much as I wanted to cram into that meeting, but I also make sure that I allow them to make all the important points they want to make. I don't just go and chip in because I want to cover 5 things. I go. So I took advantage of that relationship. I talked to them about promotion. I talked about what I'm doing. They gave me tips. They introduced me to people. Some of these people is just, they're humans, obviously, right? They just send an email and say, oh, Daniel had this question. They just send an email, pop, and that's it. And before you know it, I'm speaking with that person probably more frequently than I was even speaking to them. I know everyone has their organizational context, which may be different from mine, but I think every organization works on that. Whether you call it a sponsor or not, somebody's going to speak when you're going to be promoted. Somebody's going to sign off on something. So it may not be those people who are speaking or signing off, but they must be close enough to those who are speaking or signing off. Really important. Tip 8, which I think is really the crux of everything we've been talking about, is building trust. And I've just called this one out because there's nothing more important than it. Like I said, there's no 2 ways to it. You just must build trust. And trust is earned, like we all know, but it's not something that happens just because you deliver good work. It's a accumulation of many things. Let's pick an example. There are 2 people due for promotion. Both of them, they are just at par. They do good work. They're excellent. They communicate well. They everything, they deliver, they're just on top of their game. But they can only promote one person. One of them is black. One of them is white. And I'm using this example deliberately. The people making the promotion call are all white. And the guy that is black started off from, the first year in the organization and grew through the ranks to that level. And every time there's an event, he's always there. He goes out with the partners, he goes out, goes out with the bosses. And when the social gathering is there and he behaves himself, they have a really good impression of him. But this other guy, even though he's really good, is white, but he's just come from another organization. Let's leave racism aside. Assuming that is based on merit, there's a high likelihood that the person who will be promoted is a black person and I deliberately switched that scenario because we know the scenario we usually have is the flip side. It's a black person who is just coming in, who has not been there long enough. It's a white person who has always been there, who is going out with all the bosses. But what I've just tried to paint there is that it's not necessarily the color in that instance. It's just trust. And they've built this trust over many things. They've bonded over many things. And it's not just trust in the quality of the work, it's trust in many ways, in the way they relate, the quality of their client or customer interaction, their reputation, so many things. And if I just go quickly into how we build trust, and I'm just going to breeze through this one. You build trust by listening, listening genuinely in meetings, to people in the team, to people who report to you. When they report something to you, for instance, somebody is unwell and they cannot work, but they report to you. How do you treat them? How do you react? Do you show them care and love at that point and say, hey, okay, don't worry about it. I'm going to get it fixed. You just go and rest. Your health is important. Trust me, they're speaking to somebody as well. Somebody's going to ask them someday and say, you were unwell the other day. how did it go? It's like, oh yeah, Mayowa really helped me. It was just there for me. And act on feedback when feedback comes. Keep your promises. When you say you're going to do something, do it. If you can't do it, communicate. Don't just blank people. Deliver good work. That's a given. Show genuine interest in the vision and the ambition and the vision and the strategy of your company. We've talked about that briefly before. Be transparent, be open, be honest. You shouldn't be the one that, you're going off sick and nobody really knows why you're off sick. Always show up. And when you can't show up, let it be clear to people that, hey, I know you need me here, but the reason I can't come is because of X, Y, Z. And this point about showing up, sometimes, before I used to think it's just being available 100%. No, that's not it. It's just being open and honest when you cannot do something. Because some of the most impactful people in my team, they're not always available 100% every single time. Some of them are just people that, they show up and something has gone wrong, sometime like your child is unwell and say, oh, sorry, I can't make it today. And you're like, oh, can I actually do that? Yes, some people do that. And it doesn't mean that because of that, they will not be promoted again. Because of our time, the last one, and this one is not relevant to everyone, it's only relevant to people who are pursuing a promotion. My plan started a year before, and building your case takes effort, but don't do it alone. Don't do it in isolation. Do it with your sponsor if you have a sponsor, because I'm assuming you would have spoken to your sponsor to say, hey, this is what my vision is. This is what I'm hoping to achieve, and work with them to itemize the things that you need to do, how you need to get there. Asking them, I understand my job description, but what are those things that are not in my job description that are important for this next role? And start to think about those things, because it usually takes up to a year sometimes to address certain type of feedback. Not because it's taking you that long to do the feedback, but sometimes takes you a year to show the people that you've addressed them, right? So if there's a constructive feedback about, again, communication, sometimes it's difficult to show them if those opportunities have not presented themselves. So even though you think you've addressed them, you may not have the opportunity to actually show them for 6 months to 1 year. And let's not forget, promotion is a combination of two things: the business case and the personal case. So the personal case is you qualifying for that role based on your experience, based on your skills, based on your delivery, based on who you are. And the personal case, the business case, is the business saying, hey, there's need for this role because of a variety of reasons. Somebody has resigned. We have expanded, we've grown. We need somebody to do this. Just being conscious that we don't just get promoted because we're good. We get promoted because there's a sort of a nexus. There's a matrix of business case and personal case, and they've joined together, and it's resulted in promotion. And keep an eye on the business case when it results. So yeah, that's it. I'm hoping that this has not been a waste of your time. Again, thanks for having me. I'll pause there, but I'll just leave it on this slide, just in case we still need to address some of these other questions that are not in green. And if there are any bits in the green that are not addressed, please feel free to let me know. If you have other questions entirely that are not anything I've talked about today, please also let me know. I know I may have a short time slightly because obviously we started late, but I also tried to spend a bit of time on some of the points. So again, thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. It's been so insightful. I've learned a lot. I mean, I was writing as you spoke. I don't know if people have questions. It would be good if you have questions. You could just drop them in the chat room, please. so that we can take them. It seems you've addressed most of the questions here as you spoke, but I don't know if you could speak to number one. I know you said you touched on sponsorship and mentors. So what I hear is that it's not enough. Hard work is not enough. It's good to do good work. It's good to do hard work. It's good to be, to put yourself out there and do the work. But that would not necessarily get you to the next level. That's what I hear. You need to have someone in the room speaking for you. Yeah, you spoke about sponsorship there. So the question I was going to push out is, this sponsor you speak about, does this person have to be in your team? From the example you've given, I assume the answer is no, but I would like to hear from you. Does this person have to be in your team? How does this person even know you're doing good work? I mean, do you have to always go to report to the person to say, I'm doing good work? And then I'm tying it to your last point, which was to build your promotion case. Do you have to go to this person and say, okay, so I know you're going to be in the room when they start to talk about promotions. This is what I've done. This is why I think I should be promoted. How do you, I don't know, how do you address this? How do you push yourself out there? Because it's not just, it's not plain vanilla. It's not just as easy as you've said it. That's the truth.
Yeah.
There's a lot more. So I don't know if you could break this down a bit more.
Yeah, I can. Happy to. So the simple answer to the question is the person doesn't have to be your team. Let's give a scenario where the people making decisions are only 2 of them, and the people trying to get promoted are like 10 of them. So if everyone was using the strategy of trying to get a sponsor, are those 10 people going to be battling over those 2 people to make one of them their sponsors? Probably no. And the truth is, from my own context, and it may not apply to all organizations, and it'd be good to hear other people's thoughts as it relates to the organization. The discussions about some of those things, like promotions and moving people up, in my view, I think maybe 60 to 70% is informal. It's just somebody at lunch talking to another person and saying, oh, actually, this guy has been working for me. He's fantastic. The guy is just is just doing amazing work. And I don't know, are you guys thinking about promoting him? If you're not, I think you guys should be thinking about him. It's just getting that person senior enough to give you 2 things: insights into things that you may not know, conversations that you're not privy to, and giving you those insights in good faith. And number 2 is speaking for you. We can put a lot of emphasis on the speaking for you part. Sometimes it's not, the speaking for you part is probably just 30%. The 70% is the insights they give you, the experiences they share with you. Sometimes they prompt you to do certain things that you would not normally have done. They can say, can you just go have a meeting with XYZ, just discuss with them? And you're like, oh, really? Why do I need to have a meeting with them? They say, yeah, just go. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what has been said. You don't know what has been discussed. Just go have the meeting. But that's not something you would have thought about if you were to go at it on your own. How that answers the question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Someone has said something in the chat room. Please, number 3 on the question list we talked about.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this one. So I've really recently moved to the UK and can't seem to get a job. I've received several rejection emails. Could you provide tips on how I get my foot in the door? I thought about this one for a while, and I just want to encourage this person, honestly. If you're in this situation, it's really hard. But let's also acknowledge that all is not well with the British economy. All is not well with the global economy. But if we have a job now, we're grateful that we do. A lot of companies are putting hiring freezes. And sometimes there's a strong disconnect between HR and the hiring managers, the people actually making decisions. The people making decisions are saying, hey, I'm not hiring, but HR only got the information about hiring maybe 6 months ago, and they've pushed this, set the ball rolling, and they started to. So there are some things that are not within our control. So just wanted to make that clear, first of all. That it may not be you. It may just be that, because HR tend to give default responses because they're just clicking a button on a system that just goes and puts your name in it and say, dear Mayowa, unfortunately, see, they've sent the same email to many people. That said, I think the basics, obviously, and I don't want to tell you things that you already know, like the CV, all those things. From our experience, what I think is prioritized in the UK, probably not so in the US. There's a lot of emphasis on experience and blending into the culture. So sometimes these people who reviewing this CV just look at your experience and want to be sure that the experiences match what they're looking for. And sometimes it's just using the right keywords in the role that has been advertised. Because trust me, so I do interviews, and I do interviews like almost every month. I'm interviewing somebody, and sometimes I see some people who make it to the interview, and I'm asking, how did they get here? Because on paper the experience is there, but there's some things that you would think that if somebody had actually reviewed it, they wouldn't have made it to the interview. And there are people who are genuinely qualified who have applied for that same role, but HR have sent them, unfortunately, which is unfair. So I would say, please just, obviously, let's keep doing the basics, putting as much of our information about our experience on the CV. It's not a lot more about your qualifications, but obviously, if the role requires certain qualifications, look at the description and ensure that you tailor your CV. Try not to send the same CV to every job. I know it's difficult, especially when you're applying to like 50 applications every day or every week. It's difficult to tailor. Even if you don't do it for every role, the important roles, like the jobs you really, really want, go through the job description and do it, because some of the people who are doing the first level review, they are not as experienced as you, trust me. Some of them don't even know all of the things they're looking for. They're just there to help the hiring manager sieve through the hundreds of applications they've received, so that they can only send like 10 to the hiring manager who only has like 1 hour or 30 minutes to review like 10 CVs. They just go through. So that's, I don't think there's anything wrong from your perspective. I think if this question was about, and I've made an assumption here, and please, Omoyemi, if you want me to address the interview bit, I can spend a bit of time talking about that. I can do one-on-one as well. But if it's just you sent a CV and you got a rejection email, that's a bit I've addressed. The interview bit is a different conversation entirely. It's more about that culture, because they want you to give an account of your experience, and in a way that links to the culture of the organization. They want to be able to bring somebody in who hit the ground running, not somebody who will spend 6 to 1 year just trying to understand how things are done. I hope that was helpful. I think there's another question in the chat.
Right. Do you mind if I say a quick one about that, please?
Yes.
Yeah. So whoever is asking a question, something you might need to consider is, I guess the first thing is, are you getting interviews? Okay, yes. If you're getting interviews, you might want to talk to people who are already in jobs to prep you for interviews, like do practice interviews. And I say that because I also had the problem is I know the job, I know how to do it. If I'm talking to a Nigerian employer, they understand what I'm saying. But if you're talking to a British person, you need to say it in another way. You need to present it in another way. And you need to deliver it in another way. What do I mean? So they are very big on smart. They call it, what's that? Is it smart? No. Star. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Star. They want to be specific. So, and then, we'll go, oh, I did this. And when I did this, they are not interested in that. We want you to use this particular way. And that's the way they will understand it. Sometimes there are some nuances that you have to say that as Nigerians, when I do interview, we don't say that. But if you're talking to a British person, it helps them understand that you know the job. And it took me a very long time before like very painful long time before I got that. I eventually had to use a coach who helped me through that process. And immediately I got a coach, I practiced with some people who were not Nigerians, were also British. And I found that by the time I was going to interviews, I now started to get the offers. So you might know the job. Please don't be sad. You might know the job. I'm sure you know the job because you are getting interviews. But the interviewing process and techniques is something you might need to work on.
Thanks a lot. That was really useful. And if I should just add something quickly on that one. If the challenge is at the point of the interview, most interviewers are required to document all that you've done. And I think it's part of the British hiring law. You have to keep a record, because if you contest it and say that, somebody racially profiled you, they want to see what has been written down. So hiring managers or people at the interviews, they tend to document everything you're saying. Well, not everything, but most things you're saying in your own words. And they essentially follow the star. So for somebody to deny you of a job, they have to essentially prove in that document that they're feeling that you've not done enough. And it's hard if you follow the STAR technique and you're answering the question like they would expect with relevant, useful examples. But like I said, if this person wants to discuss a bit more on this one, I'm not a pro HR person, so I will not be able to give you like an HR perspective. I'm just going to be able to give you somebody who interviews people and some of the things we look out for. I'm happy to have a chat about this.
Thank you. I think there's another question. I'm not sure if it's a question. Okay, yeah, there's a question in the chat room. It says, being a part of some moderation sessions here and confirm the informal nature of some things even before the formal session happens. I'm also an IT auditor in a Big Four and currently a manager. I wanted to ask more specifically as to how your role has evolved as SM. Do you still do mostly reviews of work papers, or are you more concerned with business development now? This is also looking at the tip you shared about knowing what your next role is going to be.
Yeah, this is a real good question. And again, my context. So I guess it's easier for me to answer this one. One of the things it told me when I was, so I didn't say my story.
We wanted to hear.
But I mean, my story in summary is I came into the UK. I'd worked in Nigeria, in KPMG in Nigeria for 6 years. And I took a step down in my role to assistant manager, even though I left and I was already technically a manager because I left the month I was supposed to be promoted in Nigeria. I took a step down, and it was something I did, thinking that I'll just spend 1 year and be manager. But it didn't happen. I had to spend 2 years. And then, you know, after 2 years, it became easier. And then I just got promoted after another 2 years, which is quite unusual for someone in KPMG, someone to jump from manager to senior manager in 2 years. But the context is I was technically in that role. I was already doing senior manager work a year before, more than a year before. And before that time, because I came in with so much experience, I was not really acting in my role as an assistant manager. I was already doing manager work. In fact, they put me up for promotion 1 year after I arrived. In fact, 10 months after I arrived. They were going to promote me, but some people somewhere sat down and said they didn't know me well enough. Because that was the feedback they gave me. So, oh, sorry, I'd filled the form, I prepared and everything. I was getting ready for the interview, just waiting for the day of the interview. And somebody reached out to me and said, hey, actually, sorry, we can't progress with it. You know, and they gave me some flimsy excuse about, you know, there were people who even said, some of the senior managers said they didn't even know me. They've never worked with me. So who is this guy that's just coming 10 months and wants to get promoted? So that's a little bit of context on that on Miami. To the question about being an IT auditor and the nature of my work. Well, the nature of, I mean, you're in one of the big fours, and what we do essentially is the person who is accountable is a senior, the lead on the engagement, which is like the partner or the director, and we are responsible for the delivery. So everything about the delivery you're still responsible for. So even if I delegate reviewing work papers, for instance, I'm still responsible for it. So it's in my own benefit to still mostly do reviews. Am I concerned with business development right now? Well, my role does not require me to do business development anymore. If you're familiar with all that has been happening in the industry about operational separation between audit and consulting, and same with assurance. So because I only do audit, IT audit, I don't do assurance, I don't do consulting anymore. I'm not required to do business development. However, as you're also probably aware that for audit, we tend to sometimes have to tender for the work again, either as part of a new tender or a retender for an existing tender. I support that sometimes, you know, just helping with the input to that tender process and all of that. But in terms of going to market and looking for audit work, that's not part of my role. I don't do that. I'm not expected to really do that. I hope that answers the question. I don't, yeah. Okay, good. Madam, I know you have your hands up.
So you're calling me madam. My name is okay, you know what this is, madam editing.
Okay, you're right.
My question is, I'm gonna pick it from the feedback they gave about when you first tried to get promotion, and they said that they didn't know you, right? And then by the time you got, of course, obviously it means that they knew you by the time you went in the second time. So what did you do specifically for them to now know who you were? As in, how did you go about it and stuff? And I'm sure because consulting, the way it works is you're on different projects, and different projects might mean that it's not people in your team that you get to work with. Sometimes, well, I don't know how it works in KPMG anyway. Anyway, but what I want to know is, how did you now make sure that they knew you? Now, there's also this important part of, I know with consulting, and I'm sure it's the same thing with KPMG, all the side of desk conversations. I'm sure by the time you came in, everybody was already in places, you know, trying to be visible. How did you find your own side of desk? opportunities. So there are two things. How did you make sure that these senior managers, these principalities and powers said that they said they didn't know who you were? How did you now make sure that you knew who you were? The specific practical tips, and then your side of desk, understanding that I'm sure by the time you came in, so many people were already doing so many things. How did you find something for yourself? Because I'm sure when you were discussing your promotion, it was your work and all these other fine things that it presented as the value you brought forward.
That's a really good question. I think my answer will probably summarize the purpose of this meeting. So when I was giving that feedback, as you would expect, I was distraught. Don't know why my screen looks black to me, but I don't know if it's black to everyone. I was really disappointed. And honestly, the next day after, I was looking for another job. I was just like, what the heck is happening here? And I spoke to my performance manager. So for those who are not familiar with the performance manager role, is basically somebody in your team who is like a line manager, who you may or may not directly report to, who helps you to sort of navigate sort of the intricacies of performance management, what you need to do about your goals and how you need to request feedback and all those things. I was lucky to have a really good performance manager who, because he was the one that was supposed to deliver the bad news, but I think he pushed back, and my director, who actually pushed me off for promotion, came back to give me a call herself. So when I was speaking with him, he said, can we just discuss, those points on why you were ready again, and just pick up on the things that are missing. We went to a meeting room. I remember that meeting room, and I was showing somebody recently when we were talking about my promotion, and we just started doing, I think it was like 5 p.m. that day. And we just went on and on. It was just writing stuff on the board, talking about the things I currently do, which is engagement delivery. I do that really well. It talked about people. Do I do that really well? What do I do with people? I said, okay, I have some appraisee who I'm a performance manager for. I said, what else? I didn't have anything to say. Okay. It looked at my portfolio. You have this engagement that you're responsible for. Is there anything else you should be doing there? Probably not. You're doing probably even way more than the people on your level. So what we identified that day was that it was the people aspect I wasn't doing really well. And the way I went about it was so one thing I did, one visibility outside of my team, for people outside of my team to know me, and a visibility for people inside of my team. Obviously, the people inside my team were the principalities and the powers, but the people outside of my team also could be influencing the people inside of my team. So for the people outside of my team, I started volunteering for leading trainings, facilitating trainings. They were done almost like team-wide, firm-wide. And I did a couple of those. I volunteered, and somebody gave me the opportunity. And obviously, after that training, people gave me feedback. It was great. It was this. And word went out. For the people inside my team, I started to put what they call, I didn't realize the value until this feedback actually came. So I know, thanks really for asking this question. I started to put meetings in diary, tea and coffee chats with people. So I put 30 minutes in your diary. So I'll reach out, hey, hi, let's say his name is Jack. Hi, Jack. I've been in the firm now for the last 10 months, but realized we've not spoken, we've not met. Can we have a chat? Just like to have a chat. And then I just did that for all of those senior managers, spoke with them, had a chat with them. And it made a lot of difference. I just started to see things change. People started to ask me, those senior managers started to reach out to me for stuff, either to share some things with them that they thought I knew, or to help them with certain things, which opened the door of opportunities that I never had before. Because those people never reached out to me for anything before. But after they spoke with me, it just felt like, oh, actually, you know, interestingly, those were some of those people who, when I was getting promoted to senior manager, they were my key backers. They were pushing for my promotion. And if I'm being honest, I got promoted at least 6 months before I should have been promoted to senior manager. And it was primarily because of those people. I did stuff for them, and they just thought it was not on the level of a manager. They thought it was on the level of a senior manager. So like a year before that time, I was already acting in that role and doing stuff. And to your second question, how did you find your own side of the desk? And it's just looking out for opportunities. The truth is, we don't see all the opportunities because we don't have all the perspectives. But there are people who see those opportunities who we just need to talk to. So there's something I do for my team around offshore resources. So we have like offshore resources, people who support our engagement from India. I started to take the lead on that one. I started to, go out and talk to people about, what those people were doing and how we can make their work a bit more efficient. And, I saw that there was a gap in there. There was somebody doing it, but our team was going to split into two, and I saw that there was an opportunity there. But honestly, I didn't see that opportunity myself. It was somebody who I was working with, one of those senior managers. His name is Willie, and we just had a chat one day, and it was like, "Oh, I think you'd be good with this. What do you think?" I said, "Oh yeah, let me try it." And then everywhere he went to, he would talk about it. So, "Oh, Daniel is the one responsible for this in the team," and that's how I carved a niche, in that area, and I started to take up that responsibility, and that gave me visibility to speak with some partners, speak with some, really senior directors. But that's just that visibility element of it. Obviously, like I said in my presentation, you still have to do the basics. You still have to do your work right, deliver your work well, do quality work. Because if you're doing all those things, you're getting all of that visibility. And all they're talking about in those meetings when they meet is that, oh my God, Daniel Mayowa is doing some work for me, and it's just terrible. Yeah. What you want them to be talking about is how great you are when they have those discussions. And I think it makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
But can I just ask, so you talked about meeting with all of these senior people. I know this is basic, but when you met with them, were you telling them about what you could do, or you just wanted to, introduce yourself to them and tell them, or ask them how you could be of help to them? What was this discussion about?
Yeah, I like that. So, I had this naughty list in my head, which was who was more a principality, who was a bad principality, and who was like somebody I could. So like two categories. There were some that were just really difficult human beings. Like I wasn't sure what to expect. So when I put the call in there, in fact, they were the ones that rescheduled our calls for so many times. Oh, sorry, I can't make this time. I'll reschedule again. I can't make this time. For those ones, I went with a mindset of, you've been doing X, Y, Z, and I know, this is taking a lot of your time. I was just wondering if there was something I could do to help. And I started to tell them my experience. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And because there are also people that they're waiting for you to mess up. So they're like, oh yeah, you want to do it? Okay, just go. They don't even do it like excitedly. It's like they want to set you up. So they push things to you and say, okay, just go ahead and try this. But
Wonderful.
you are the one who knows what you want, right? So when such a thing happens, you don't see it as a problem, you see it as an opportunity. And it's sometimes really difficult to navigate because there are also people that are difficult to please. So you have to be careful. In fact, sometimes it's better not to ask them to do, you want to do stuff for them if you're not sure you can deliver. So it's quite tricky. The second category of people are those people who are nicer. You don't even need to ask them if you want to do anything. You just say you just wanted to know them, just want to get to know them. It's in those conversations that they themselves will begin to suggest things and you can get their opinion on things. In your first meeting, don't talk about your promotion. Don't talk about the fact that you want to get promoted.
Okay.
I don't think your first meeting is a meeting to do that. I think just get to know them. The goal is to build trust so that when they think about somebody, you're the one they're thinking about. When they think about somebody to ask to help them in certain areas, you're the one they think about. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take time. It takes time to build.
Thank you.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like, first of all, find out the people who are in the room, either they are principalities or power or they are nice. Find out who they are. And then the second thing is the ones that are principalities and powers, find out what you think their pain points are, and then offer to take away those pain points. And then ones that are nice, just introduce yourself, like, I just want to know who you are, kind of something. Okay.
Get them on your side, because those people, they may not be deciders,
but
they can swing votes. Yeah, it's like swing states in elections.
Mm.
Those states that can be Democrats, they can be Republicans. They may not be really the most important states, but on the day of election, they can prove to be important because they are the ones on the fence. All you need is to have them on your side.
Okay.
To not say something negative.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Do we still have any other questions before we call it a day? Questions? Going?
Yeah.
I guess the next question for me, I mean, I know you just got senior manager, but we're Nigerians. So what is the target for associate director? Is it, or is it director next?
Well, it's director in the UK. Like associate director is similar to senior manager. Yeah. In I think the people who use associate director the most are the people who do deals, like deal advisory and those kind of people. So the next is director.
All right. So how long? 1 year, 2 years?
So there's minimum time in role for promotions, like manager to senior manager. Minimum time in role is 2 years, and that's what I did. Minimum time in role. So essentially, no matter how smart you are, no matter how good you are, they will keep you for 2 years. Minimum time in role for senior manager to director is 3 years. So except I moved to another organization who are ready to give me director, my minimum time in role will be 3 years. I don't have any major plans yet, but if there's anything that one needs to do when you're moving closer to that leadership position, and from a consulting perspective, is you need to work closer to the leaders. And if you were targeting visibility within your team before, it has to go wider. It has to be visibility within the
business.
Within the business, yes. You need to be doing you need to be owning something that when they say XYZ, you're the name they're thinking about. Yeah, it's challenging, but it's also not too challenging if you start to think about it, early enough.
Okay. Yeah. I done the it's the same thing. I'm also going to write down a list of my principalities and powers.
Yeah. It was something I underestimated so much.
Yeah.
I think it probably had the most impact. And I'm happy that question came up, Busola. It probably had the most impact on my journey in the UK. Just knowing who those people are, in fact, I do it for everyone now. Like if I go for a training with some people and I find that somebody's talking a lot, somebody's so influential, I don't need to be their friend. I just need to put some time in, have a chat, and just talk about things. And you'll be surprised that a lot of people are actually willing to spend 30 minutes out of their day to actually talk about nonsense. Talk about, I mean, not nonsense in that sense, but talk about non-work things, and you'll be surprised. If our really senior people as well are willing to do that. Some people may not be ready for, virtual chats. They might be face-to-face. So if you want to go to the office and do it lunchtime and just grab lunch with them and just sit down, or some people, you see them in the lunchroom, they're sitting alone. Don't feel like you're disrupting anything. Obviously, don't just go and sit in front of them, right? If they're really senior, you want to ask, hi, if you know their name, just call their name. My name is, what's it called? I was just wondering if I could, join you. You'll be surprised. They probably say yes, and then just start a conversation. You're the one who knows what you're, and again, the conversation doesn't have to be about promotion. In fact, it shouldn't even be about promotion. Let it be about something else. You'll be surprised when next they see you in the elevator, they're the ones that will call your name first. I say, oh, Daniel, Mayowa, what's up? How are you? How are things? How's your daughter again? Or how's your son again? Some of the things you told them then, they will recall them and talk about them again.
Yeah, and I think if anything else, I've also learned is that they having a Black person of African descent or a Black person generally that is on their side or that knows them is also looks good on them. What I mean,
It does.
Yeah.
this is also this you also want to be seen
As being diverse
who is
and
campaigning
inclusive.
Yeah, and inclusive. That I mean, the other day, one of my senior MDs, he said, "Oh, I know it is. I want you to do this. It's very important to me personally." Mama, I say, "Why is it important to you? It's just something to do. But it's okay. You use me, I use you. Everybody's happy."
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a very good evening. We've learned a lot. Thank you, Mayowa. Thank you so much. You could have been anywhere else, but I mean, you decided to spend your evening with us. And we've learned so much from you. And if you really learned from Mayowa tonight, I just want you to put in the comment section in the chat box so that we know that you've been following and this has been really insightful. Thank you so much, everyone who has also been here in the last 2 hours. I didn't know time had gone so quickly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, love.
Thanks everyone for having me. It was such a pleasure to be here, and hopefully one or two things I said have been helpful. If there's anything that you want to clarify, I'm still sharing my screen. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to give anyone a call to speak about anything if you want to chat further. And Fidelia, we go way back, Oshrin, Igomu. Good to know you're on the call.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. So have a good night, everyone. I think we'll call it a day at this point.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Speak later.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.